Baby Hannah was just 13 months old when her mother, Chloe, took her life, stabbing her to death in a home in Canton, Georgia. Prosecutors say Chloe was living a non-traditional lifestyle involving a polygamy cult, and it was a murder and attempted suicide fueled by some sort of twisted jealousy. But the defense says Chloe was legally insane when she murdered her baby. We have all the latest from the cult baby murder trial. But first, on February 22nd, 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley went for a morning run near the University of Georgia campus. When she didn't return, her roommate got worried and called police. Laken's body was found less than an hour later. The initial investigation revealed she died from blunt force trauma and her skull was disfigured. Investigators worked quickly and identified a suspect, and now Jose Ibarra is on trial for the murder of Laken Riley.
Good evening and welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Ted Rollins in for Vinnie Politan, and that's where we're starting tonight with 22-year-old Laken Riley. She was a nursing student, bright future that was until her life was taken. She was ambushed and brutally murdered while out for a run near the campus of the University of Georgia. According to the state, the perpetrator had been out there all morning looking for a target. The man they accused, Jose Ibarra. He's a 26-year-old from Venezuela who entered the country illegally back in 2022, and the state claims that Laken Riley wasn't his first target. They alleged Ibarra attempted to gain access to another student's apartment while she was showering earlier that morning. There's campus surveillance video, prosecutors say, that backs that up. According to the state, Laken Riley fought for her life, and now the state has crucial evidence against Ibarra because of that fight. His DNA under her fingernails, his thumbprint on her phone. Today was day one of the trial. Court TV was inside the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joins us from Athens, Georgia, has the very latest. Kelly, a very difficult day, a very emotional day on that campus. What could you tell us about? Let's start, I guess, with the opening statements.
Well, good evening to you, Ted. The opening statements will first talk about the state and the way it delivered its opening. So keep in mind, this is a bench trial, not a jury trial. So not as high with the emotions coming from the state, but still, with what the prosecutor had to say here, everyone inside that courtroom, emotions were running high, especially at times when some graphic video was played of the discovery of Laken Riley. But during the state's opening, the state talked about forensic evidence, digital evidence, as well as video evidence, and why all of that points to Jose Ibarra as the man who killed Laken Riley. Let's listen to a bit of the state's opening.
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus.
You heard the prosecutor there saying that he, Jose Ibarra, went hunting for females on the campus of University of Georgia, which is just right here, basically where we are, right outside the courthouse here. The campus is not far from here, and it's buzzing tonight because there's a big football game close by. People in the community are talking about this case, saying that they're glad the trial is finally here. This happened 9 months ago. The family of Laken Riley inside the courthouse today, very emotional at times. Why don't we go ahead and listen to some of the defense counsel's opening. Defense counsel is saying this is a case that is just lacking in evidence.
The evidence in this case is very good that Laken Riley was murdered. The evidence that Jose Ibarra killed Laken Riley is circumstantial. The evidence that anyone had any intent or certainly committed any sexual assault is speculation.
So you heard defense counsel there saying that the evidence against his client is lacking, pointing to an Adidas hat, saying that it was Jose Ibarra's brother that wore that Adidas hat, also talking about the fact that the DNA evidence in this case, that the state needs a machine to tell you who that DNA belongs to and points to. The human eye couldn't figure it out, and so it's questioning the reliability of the machine, Ted.
How did the state start its case?
The state started its case very strong, brought forth the roommate of Laken Riley, who described her relationship with Laken, talking about how they were like family. They would know what each other they were up to every day. She talked about how Laken would often go for a run and she would be gone for about an hour. They also played this 911 call that was reporting Laken missing. Why don't we go ahead and listen to a bit of that?
Mercy Police, this is Jed. Hi, we're calling because our roommate went out for a run at 9. She usually runs like through Lake Herrick behind grad housing, and we haven't heard from her. And we all just got like service back, so we don't think it has anything to do with the outage. We went to go look to where her last location was, and all we found was an AirPod.
And then also another roommate of Laken Riley's was on the stand as well, describing their relationship and when they began to feel worried and red flags were raised, wondering what was going on because they noticed on the cell phones, they tracked where each other were on their cell phones, and they noticed that Laken Riley hadn't been moving. Let's hear what she had to say.
While out there, did you see Laken?
No.
Okay. When you found the AirPod, did you look at it?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you think it was Laken's?
I did.
Why did you think it was Laken's AirPod?
She always had a little bit more wax on her AirPods, so I noticed the earwax.
These girls described their relationship. They were very close with Laken Riley, a lot of them sorority sisters, and just talked about that bond that they had with Laken and how hard it was when then they all realized that she was gone. Ted?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to just see those young women and know that their friend is not there tonight during that football. I mean, you could feel the excitement behind you, Kelly. You know, this is Tennessee, Georgia game. There's people there for that, and Laken should absolutely be there as well. Other witnesses that took the stand.
They did, Ted. So law enforcement, the state, after talking with the roommates or having the roommates come to the stand, then they had law enforcement officials in which they talked about all the evidence in this case, at times holding up the bloody rocks, the part of a tree that had blood on it, as well as some of Laken Riley's hair. Also, we heard from some other law enforcement officials talking about the body camera footage. Let's listen to some other testimony.
How long did it take you to find her?
From the original call, it would be about 21 minutes. From this area, once I was on the field, looks like it would have been closer to about 7 or 8 minutes.
How would you describe that vegetation?
It's not really super thick necessarily, but there are a lot of vines and thorn bushes and things like that that kind of interweave. Not super difficult to walk through, but it was catching my uniform every now and then.
And how would you describe the lighting out there?
The lighting was pretty decent. It was the sun was up. I'm not sure if it was completely cloudless, but not overcast.
To the university, I found her. Ma'am. Oh. I need EMS immediately to the location where the phone pinged. Ma'am. She's down, she's not breathing.
And Ted, it was during that body camera footage that some of the people in the gallery had to walk out of the courtroom because emotions were running high. Graphic content in that video, very hard to watch because no one would have expected this to happen, because on this campus, when you talk with people that are in this community, they say that running trails, so many people go on it. When we're here on campus, you see so many girls at night jogging, running. No one's really thinking anything of it. So for something like that to happen, they say here on this campus with such an anomaly. Ted?
Yeah, it's at 9:30 in the morning as well. And this is, it is just, it rocks you to your core, and to think what this family's going through during this trial. It's day one of the trial. Kelly Craft, thank you. Kelly will be back in that courtroom when they're back at it on Monday morning. Let's bring in our think tank for tonight, former senior homicide prosecutor and founder of the Villalona law firm, Bernarda Villalona. Also with us, the chief public defender for Oakland County, Michigan. She represented the Oxford High School shooter. Paulette Lofton is with us, and the attorney who represented Johnny Depp in his defamation case, and a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Mr. Ben Chu. Good evening to all of you. Bernarda, this is a bench trial. Why go with a bench trial here in this case? And do you agree with it?
Well, this was a decision by the defense attorney to go bench, definitely not by the prosecution. So the defense attorney made a cautious decision in the sense of a calculated decision, in the sense that he knew that this case is very emotionally driven. You have to think by the way that she died, the manner that she died, that she was a student, she was going out for a run, and the manner that she was actually found is going to pull at the heartstrings of anyone because it's very emotional. So the defense is hoping and banking on that by going bench, the judge will be able to put his emotions aside and decide the facts and the evidence as it's presented. He's hoping to find some form of reasonable doubt in terms of the forensics in this case, in terms of the fingerprints, the Laken print that was recovered, and also is contesting itself the DNA and the DNA analysis in the case, and hoping that maybe the judge may find some reasonable doubt that it's not his client that committed this, that it's possibly his brother who committed this, which I think if it were a jury trial, with all the emotions and the high-stake emotions in this case, they'll see far past that. And also given the climate of the country at this point, with the defendant being an illegal immigrant, I think he believed it would have played a role in the decision-making by a jury.
Yeah, could have alienated jurors right out of the gate as soon as they found that out. Paulette, your thoughts over, it seems as though the state has overwhelming evidence, and part of the reason for that was they were able to find her so quickly and to start that processing of the crime scene within minutes, hours.
That's correct. I mean, I watched the opening this morning, and the prosecution put on such a good timeline. It doesn't seem like there is anything missing. They're able to track her because of what she was wearing and her phone, the watch she had on. They then are able to find ring footage of an individual that they argue is the defendant dumping some of the items. It just seems like they have so much evidence already lined up, and then they argued quite a bit about the DNA evidence found, the fingerprint evidence found. So it does seem like their case is very solid at this point.
Ben, the idea that you're going to convince a gray-haired Southern judge that DNA is unreliable seems a bit far-fetched.
I agree with that, Ted, but going back to what Bernarda said, I think the real almost certainty that the jury would be wildly inflamed by all the circumstances, including the identity of the defendant and that he's an illegal immigrant in this political context. I think it's Hobson's choice for the defense. I think they're probably right. As unlikely it is that the judge will go their way, at least it gives him perhaps a tiny chance.
And maybe, Bernarda, if you, let's say you think your client's going down, maybe having the judge decide the case will help you in sentencing? Is that maybe part of the strategy?
It's a possibility. It's actually an unspoken conversation where with attorneys, you think that if you know that the evidence is so strong, instead of going through a jury trial as a defense attorney, you ask for a bench trial, because then you can argue that you spare the taxpaying money with having a jury sit down for a trial for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks and making the decision. Instead went bench because it's more of a technical question and of issue as opposed to one of fact having to deal with the jury. But regardless, remember, Ted, well, we have to think that regardless if he found guilty, no matter how much time he's going to be sentenced, he's going to be deported because he's in this country illegally. So it's not really about the time itself. And he was also spared the death penalty. But I think in a case like this, he's automatically going to do life. The question will be, will he do life without the possibility of parole or life with the possibility of parole? And if there is a possibility of parole, he's getting deported.
Yeah, as soon as he's paroled, if indeed he is paroled, because there was a possibility of parole. That's different than actually getting paroled. Let's get a break. Our think tank is going to stay here as we review the timeline of Laken Riley's murder. Plus, here's what's coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Dog the Bounty Hunter joins us live to discuss the search for 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
You will see this 13-month-old beautiful baby girl who had been brutally murdered by her mother.
The Cult Baby Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central, on Court TV.
Campus is really heavy right now. We're all heartbroken. I want to use this time to tell you about Laken and all she was to Alpha Chi. It is so obvious to me why it feels so dark right now, and that is because we lost one of the brightest lights that there's ever been. This campus and our sisterhood will never be the same without Laken Riley. She was devoted to making this world a better place, and we have no doubt that she would have been an incredible nurse. It is absolutely earth-shattering to think that the world will never have that opportunity, but the impact that she made within her 22 years was enough to last a lifetime and beyond.
That was Laken Riley's former sorority president speaking shortly after her death. Her friends and family say Laken was a wonderful person who planned to spend the rest of her life helping people once she got her nursing degree. As we begin to lay out the state's case for you tonight, one fact is very clear after day one. Laken fought for her life, fought very hard, and in the end, she actually suffered terribly in her final moments. We learned that today. In their opening statement, the prosecutor laid out the timeline of the moments before and after her death.
We'll start with the timeline, and the timeline is established by a lot of the digital evidence that you're going to hear about. But she left her house at 9:03 in the morning. We know that for several reasons. She was captured on her Ring doorbell, and you'll see that video through our first witness. And she also was captured on a trail cam that becomes very important in this case. And at about 9:05 a.m., she's captured running from her house down Rogers Road, eventually towards the crime scene where she encounters this defendant. At 9:11 a.m. exactly, Laken is a few minutes into her run, and we have some digital data which we'll talk to you about, which is a Garmin watch that Laken had gotten for Christmas that she's wearing on her run. And this watch captured a lot of important data that you're going to hear about. But she is on her run, and her phone, she activates the emergency function of her iPhone, and you're going to hear about that through testimony of the witnesses who examined her phone. She activates the emergency function of her iPhone, and she attempts to call 911, and she, in fact, does call 911. Her call is connected to ACC PD. At 9:12, you'll hear that the call was hung up, and I'm going to play the call for you. At 9:12, the call was hung up by the caller, not the 911 center. The 911 center did not hang up on Laken Riley. The phone hung up. And at 9:12, they tried to call her back, and there was no answer.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. County 911. Can anyone hear me? Clark County 911.
Laken's mom, who Laken usually talks to on her run, who started calling Laken at around 9:06 that morning. And you'll just see the call logs from that and the evidence of that through Laken's phone. And when she could not reach Laken, she began calling Laken's 3 roommates. And you'll meet all 3 of them: Lily Steiner, Sophia Magana, and Connolly Huff. So at around 11:30 on the day of her murder, 2 roommates, Sophia and Lily, went and walked the trails back behind the intramural fields at the University of Georgia where Laken used to run, but they also had her digital profile. And her digital profile put her in the middle of the Oconee Forest, and they had noticed that she had not moved. She had not moved for hours. And so they walked to where they could last see her digital profile, and the 2 roommates found one of Laken's AirPods. They photographed it, they collected it, they went back to their house where they could have Wi-Fi to connect because they had no phone service in the forest and an outage was on. And at 12:05 p.m., they called the University of Georgia police and reported that Laken Riley was missing.
Just 8 minutes after she left her house on that run, she was calling 911 because she obviously was in trouble. He was waiting. That's what prosecutors say, just waiting. Hunting is how they said it in their opening statements. He was hunting for prey. We're back with our think tank, Bernarda Villalona, Paulette Lofton, and Ben Chu. Paulette, the timeline, the time of day, the brazenness of all of this is really hard to comprehend. We're not talking about a rural country road. We're talking about the University of Georgia at 9 o'clock in the morning. There are people out there. This was as brazen as it gets.
I would agree. I was very shocked when I heard the time. I was thinking maybe very early morning or late evening, and it was dark. But obviously, as we heard the officer testifying, it seemed to be a sunny day. There wasn't a ton of cloud cover. So for this to happen at that time, I am sure that is one of the most shocking things to the people who go to school there and the officers that found her.
And Ben, the fact that her friends were keeping tabs of her with Life 360, her mother as well, this was seemingly, I don't know what advice you'd give her to do something differently, right? She was doing everything, what, you're just not supposed to run on a college campus? It's really horrifying. And to that point, looking at this trial, are you surprised there wasn't a plea deal here? Because it seems like this is a slow plea.
Yeah, Ted, I agree. Well, as to your first point, yes, I don't see how they could have taken any more precautions, and that this would happen in broad daylight is shocking. And yes, you would think under these circumstances there would have been a deal, but maybe the defendant was unwilling to do that.
Bernarda, you touched on it earlier, the aspect that he was in the country, is in the country illegally. I mean, it really doesn't play any part into this. This crime is about a just vicious human being. Doesn't matter where they're from. This is, it's a rare human occurrence. Thank God we don't have monsters running around like this. But whether it's him or someone else, whoever did this is the worst of the worst.
Oh, absolutely. I remember when this first happened, it also made me nervous, and it also ran through the runners community because I'm a runner as well. So I go out for runs, just how this woman went out for a run in her clothing and her garment wash with her AirPods and her phone. And she was well prepared in terms of keeping safety measures of having her phone in her hand, and the SOS already planned. The garment provided a lot of evidence for the prosecution. The AirPods also provided evidence. So all this technology did assist with the investigation itself. But, it's sad because it's like, how could you have prevented something like this from happening? I mean, she went for a run, not at 6 or 5 in the morning like a lot of us go, but instead of 9 o'clock in the morning, where you would think that she would be safe around that time.
Absolutely. There's so much evidence here. Let's go through some of it that came out today as part of the state's opening statement. Prosecutor showed the judge, keep in mind there's no jury here, this is a bench trial, so the prosecution showed the judge videos, photographs, other compelling evidence. There's Jose Ibarra's alleged thumbprint is on Laken's phone, and you heard that 911 call was hung up by the caller, and then it wasn't answered when the 911 dispatcher tried to call back, and there's, guess whose thumbprint is on the hang-up button? The defendants. They also played surveillance video that they say shows, and this is really, really horrible, creepy. They shows Ibarra attempting to get into another student's apartment just before Riley was killed. Surveillance video shows him, the man they believe is Ibarra. And by the way, that other person's apartment was a female student who was taking a shower at the time of that video, and he apparently was trying to get into that apartment. And then you see him there discarding Laken's jacket in a dumpster and then casually walking away. Finally, there's some graphic images also that the state showed, images of a bloody rock found near Laken's body that is believed to be the murder weapon. You remember her skull was literally bashed in by whoever did this to her. The state says it's the defendant. They say they have the right guy. Paulette, there was in the defense opening statement this insinuation that, well, they don't have, all they have is a machine that processes this forensic evidence. Well, that's how it works, yeah. And there's also a fingerprint. That's not a machine. That's a fingerprint examiner. Is there any chance, from what we know now after today, that they have the wrong guy, in your estimation?
I think it would be very difficult. And sometimes as a defense attorney, all you can say, you aren't left with very many things to argue. So you argue reasonable doubt. You argue that the case is all circumstantial evidence. You take issue with either an officer's testimony or the running of DNA tests or a cell phone examination, because you can't just stand up there and say nothing. So I think with the case as the prosecutor laid it out, I think it will be very, very difficult for this one fact finder, this one judge, to find that they do have the wrong individual. I think one of the most interesting pieces of evidence that I heard about today was they were able, the video that you just showed of the individual that they are saying was the defendant, putting items, Miss Riley's sweatshirt in the dumpster. They then follow that individual and see that he's discarding something somewhere else. And they go and find it, and it's the black gloves, and the thumb is missing. So it obviously makes sense that a thumbprint would then be found on her phone. So again, I don't think the defense has a lot to argue. So I'm not surprised by the arguments that he's making. And again, I think the prosecutor has a pretty tight case.
Yeah, sure seems that way. A lot of times, day one of a trial after the openings, you're watching it and you're thinking, oh, this person's got a chance. Not in this one. This one seems pretty cut and dry, but we'll see. They'll be back at it on Monday in Athens, Georgia. We'll get a break. The think tank is staying with us. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about a case that does have some people thinking. The cult baby murder trial also going on in the state of Georgia. We're going to examine some key testimony from a psychologist about the defendant's fragile mental state. That happened today. This is before she stabbed her 13-month-old baby to death. Stay with us.
These delusions that Miss Driver was experiencing, do you believe that they go beyond what Mr. Joyce was trying to teach her with respect to their belief system?
I do. I mean, there were certainly things that she talked about that aligned with the things that he taught her. But there are several reasons why I don't think that the ones that were really leading up to this were actually part of that religious belief. The other reason I don't believe that it's entirely just what she's been taught is that she was having delusions before she ever even met him.
Welcome back to Closing Arguments. I'm Ted Rollins. Filling in for Vinnie Politan tonight, you just heard the only witness called today by the defense in the cult baby murder trial. 24-year-old Chloe Driver is facing multiple charges, including malice murder, in the stabbing death of her 1-year-old daughter, Hannah Nicole. The alleged murder occurred in December of 2020 when Chloe was involved in what prosecutors are calling a polygamous cult with radical beliefs. Driver has pled not guilty by reason of insanity after her defense team claims she was, quote, in the midst of a psychotic episode that included paranoia, delusional benefits, hallucinations, and disordered thinking. The sole witness on the stand today was this defense expert testifying about Chloe's mental health.
There were other indications that, or Ms. Driver, did she talk to you about how she was attempting, you said she was attempting to, I guess, not believe some of the following and teachings that Mr. Joyce had, but was there also indications that she was trying to leave that setting with her child?
She told me she tried to leave multiple times. She talked about one incident. She really only talked about two in particular, but one of them was an incident where she ran out in the street and tried to flag down a motorist. And the other one was when she called her parents and tried to get the parents to come pick her up and take her home to Tennessee.
Were you aware that her relationship with her parents was somewhat isolated by this group setting?
My understanding from the things that Ms. Driver told me was that she was incredibly isolated from everybody outside of the little family that they made. That she was not allowed to speak to other people unless they were trying to recruit them, that she wasn't allowed to go into stores or spend money or use a phone without being supervised. She wasn't allowed to have a job unless they really needed it. So she only had like 2 jobs in her life, and they were about like 2 weeks long or something like that. A motel, I think, like cleaning up motel rooms or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But so she was very isolated. The only people in her life were the people that the family, the group, the cult, whatever you want to call them, allowed her to be accessed to in her descriptions.
Did she tell you that when she would have occasions to talk with her parents that frequently, or even all the time, that Mr. Van Michael was there listening to her phone calls?
That they were monitored, yes. Yeah. She did tell me that.
And that he would frequently monitor her text messages and communications with anybody through her phone. Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct.
And I think you said it earlier, but your clinical opinion is that someone who was already in a state of paranoia and experiencing delusions prior to that type of environment, that type of living situation would likely enhance that tenfold.
Yeah, at least over time. It may at the beginning because the borderline personality disorder, she may have really liked that close control at first, but over time, without any kind of treatment and things like that for her delusions and things like that, yes. And then I think it got worse with the baby because she started to realize that maybe the baby needs something different and started to question things, and then the CBD happened, and I think that all just sort of triggered a decompensation is what we call it, when your symptoms get worse. That she decompensated at least starting in September of 2020 and just continued to go down and was not able to get the treatment that she needed. There may be different ways of arriving at what the actual name of the diagnosis is, but I am confident in the symptoms that I observed and documented.
All right, that was the defense expert. It's going to be a crucial witness if the defense hopes to be successful. Court resumes Monday morning in Canton, Georgia. We're back with our think tank, Bernardo Villalona, Paulette Lofton, and Ben Chu. Ben, does the defense have any chance here? At first, I thought, oh, there's no way. But when they brought in one of those nutty cult members who talked about drinking his own urine and this weird life that this kid who had been scooped up at 16 and these guys were 20 years older than her. I don't know, there might be a juror that's sympathetic here. Your thoughts?
Ted, I agree. I found this expert quite credible. She was speaking in normal language. She wasn't using a lot of jargon. And what she said made a great deal of common sense. I mean, this woman certainly seems quite disturbed.
Bernarda, do you agree that the defense has a shot here, given the fact that a mother killed her 1-year-old, and that is hard for jurors to get over?
That's an uphill battle because you're dealing with a 1-year-old as the victim, especially since you're dealing that 1-year-old was her daughter, was her child, and she is the mother. But you just never know with a jury. So here, when you're dealing with that there was a cult and about the acts of this cult, you're automatically, as just like a layperson, be like, oh, something is wrong with them. Something is mentally wrong with them to be involved in such a cult and engage in these acts. But here, when you throw in that there's an expert that's testifying about the mind frame, you know, you may find that one juror that may side with the defense, and all you need is that one juror to either hang the jury or push for an acquittal. But let's just remember that even if she's found not guilty by reason of insanity, it doesn't mean that she's automatically released. She's going to be shipped to a hospital where she'll remain until she is back to, I guess, normal or is sane and is be able to join society.
Yeah, absolutely. Paulette, the country has evolved in many ways. What about mental illness? Do jurors, are they still very skeptical of the diagnosis of mental illness in a case like this, throwing it away as mumbo jumbo, or do you think that there has been a change over the years and jurors are willing to listen?
I do think there has been a change. It's definitely not taboo like it was some years ago. And I think a lot more community members either know someone with mental illness or know more about it because it is talked about so frequently in the news and in media and on social media. So I do think that juror members are a little bit more forgiving and understanding when it comes to this. But again, I agree with Bernarda. It is such an uphill battle with a mom who kills or allegedly kills her own child. I think jurors sometimes get so stuck on that fact and maybe put themselves even in her shoes, even though she had, it doesn't sound like a very good upbringing, was taken out of her home very young and then was put in this very tumultuous living situation. I still think it's hard for jurors to understand that she couldn't have tried to leave or called 911 or done something else to stop herself from killing her child.
I assume, Ben, you don't put her on the stand. She would, that would be a bad move, correct?
I would agree.
Ben, do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Just because of her age, and she killed her daughter, and you don't want her talking about killing her daughter. Big thanks to our think tank, Bernarda Villalona, Paulette Lofton, Ben Chu. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thank you so much. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you coming in on Friday night. Coming up, we'll reveal something else you need to know. Plus, here's what we're looking at for 9 o'clock next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, updates from official law enforcement in the search for Sebastian Rogers stopped months ago, but the search to find the missing teen has not. Tonight, Dog the Bounty Hunter joins us live to fill us in on any new leads in his investigation.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
Tyler, why do you think you killed your parents?
Who's going to get out of my act?
Interview with a Killer. Season finale, Sunday, 8/7 Central. And don't miss the new season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
All right, time for something else you need to know. Court TV's original series, Interview with a Killer, has a new episode premiering Sunday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. It is a true crime docuseries. Boy, if you haven't seen it, it is fantastic. Award-winning journalist David Scott takes you inside high-security prisons across the country and inside the minds of convicted killers. Sunday's episode features convicted murderer Tyler Hadley. He's a Florida man who, at the age of just 17 years old, bludgeoned his mother and father to death with a hammer. Prosecutors say he then spent about 3 hours cleaning up the bloody scene in the house and then hosted a party with his parents' bodies still inside the house. Friends at the house showed up to the party, said he bragged about it, even eventually started showing some of them the bodies in the bedroom. Hadley is serving 2 life sentences after a judge called his crime brutal, heinous, and premeditated.
So your mom took 36, 37 blows.
Yeah, I guess so.
What else do you remember?
I remember my dad running out.
In the commotion, your dad came out?
Yeah.
You described a stare down.
Maybe for a couple seconds.
Couple seconds.
Maybe a second. And I must have ran really fast because I got right to him.
What's in your mind at that point?
The same thing that was already in my mind. Do it.
Do it?
Yeah.
Joining us now to talk about this latest episode is the show's host, David Scott. David, so glad to be able to talk to you. This is such a fascinating series, and the way that you are able to control these interviews in these environments, it's fantastic because you don't let up. You don't let, someone roll on and on about their pity story. You've got the ammunition right there and also really leading it. First, let's talk a little bit about Tyler Hadley. What vibe did you get from this guy? Because, boy, through the screen, I'm feeling a bit of a creep vibe.
Yeah. Ted, thanks for having me on. This episode is really about the dark reaches of the adolescent mind. What would make a 17-year-old boy with a charmed life and 2 loving parents murder them unprovoked? And so for the first time, the now 30-year-old Tyler Hadley looks back and talks about his 17-year-old self and what could have driven him to such extreme lengths.
Did you get the sense that he has been rehabilitated at all? What was your gut after walking out of that interview in terms of Tyler Hadley today compared to when he was 17?
Well, now he, presumably has a fully developed, functioning frontal lobe. That's different. I can't say whether or not he's fully rehabilitated, but he certainly is forthcoming in the interview. He seems sincere. He answers all our questions honestly and openly. And he gives a truly chilling, detailed recounting of both the crime itself and what he thinks sort of possessed him to carry it out.
What's your takes and observations now looking back at the entire season and all these people that you have talked to in prisons across this country? Do you feel overall that the lion's share of these individuals are good people that did bad things or evil people that are just out there?
That's a great question, and I think one of the really interesting things about this limited season of 5 hours is that each crime, each murder type is really well differentiated. The offenders are really all over the map. We have some that deny their crimes, and we work hard to expose them. And we have others that reveal themselves and admit to their crimes. I think Tyler Hadley is unlike all of the others in the extent to which he, seems to be leaning into a full-throated confessional. And in some ways, he struggles to articulate his complex thoughts and feelings. But you do get the sense that this is now a young man who is truly trying to reckon with how he could have let an idea that got trapped into his teenage brain annihilate his family.
Wow. David Scott, thank you very much. Tune in. Entire episode Sunday, 8 o'clock, right here on Court TV. Fascinating look inside the mind of a convicted murderer. Before we go tonight, I want to have you take a look at the screen here. Please take a close look. This is a missing 17-year-old Sophia Butler. She was last seen on November 7th in Taunton, Massachusetts. If you have any information about Sophia, please call the Taunton Police Department in Mass. 508-823-5000 or always 1-800-THE-LOST. Let's see if we can get her home. Stay tuned. We got another hour of live true crime with Vinnie Politan Investigates. That's coming up next.